बोले सोने हाल सासरी अकाल।
Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to another edition of Encounters. Today we're joined by two ladies, by Suba Rasab and Manjeet Kaur. They are members of the national initiative of what is the Rape Crisis Centre, but they are based in Coventry. Their organisation is called CRASAC, which is the Coventry Rape and Sexual Abuse Centre. The subject today is one of the most sensitive subjects for the Asian community and the Sikh community to have to face, but it's one that we all agree is the most necessary conversation that we can ever have with our children, and particularly with our daughters, our sisters, and even our mothers. So without further ado, we're going to get on with that conversation, and hopefully we can all help each other by enlightening ourselves on what is the issue and what we can do about it. So Benji's, Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Could you enlighten our audience at home to just how much of a problem, how deep this issue is?
Okay, so sexual violence is what we work with at CRASAC.
Yeah.
We work with people who are still experiencing sexual violence or have experienced it sometime in their life. Like you said, we work with the Coventry one, and it's people who live in Coventry and live around the surrounding areas. And locally, the issue for us is the people who access our services. So we've just finished another year, and from that year we've found that over 8,500 people in Coventry alone have accessed our services for being survivors of sexual violence. That's Coventry. It's a very small city.
That's the BME community, yeah?
No, that's everybody. And then within the BME community, we've got what's the percentage now, Manjit? Is it?
It's around 14%.
14% of the BME community has accessed the CRASAC services.
CRASAC services, yeah.
So they're part of that 8,500. But looking at the scale of kind of how big of an issue sexual violence is, the stats we always go with is 1 in 5 women over the age of 16 will experience sexual violence in their lifetime. And if you think about yourselves, if you look at your family dynamic and you've got 4 daughters and your mum, one of them will basically experience sexual violence in their lifetime. And when we're looking at boys under the age of 16, it's 1 in 6. So they're very, very vulnerable to actually experience it. And we know those stats aren't accurate to what survivors are actually experiencing. That's reported. That's reported.
And we will come back to how many, NSPCC's, according to NSPCC's report, 82% of children under age 16, they never tell anyone about their abuse. 82%. Every second, 2/3 of population they don't tell about. So we can imagine now what's the problem, how is the problem.
How large that problem is.
How large is the problem, yeah.
Because you're saying boys as well.
Absolutely.
1 in 6 boys
are
victims to sexual abuse or sexual attack. When we talk about 82% don't come forward to make public or to report that sexual offence, we see that with sort of historic sexual abuse cases that are going on now, where people are speaking out 30 and 40 years later. Of the 18% of people that are reporting it, is there a particular racial group or a religious group that is sort of more represented? I know it's a poor turn of phrase, but is there any one group that's more represented than others? Is there one that's predominantly more victimized than any other?
We don't know. Sexual abuse is not only a problem in one particular community. I think it's a global problem. So we can't say it's 18% are particular one religion or one community. They are from any community, we can say. From 18%, we said to you before, around 12% BME in Coventry BME are reporting. So it's 18% become in all communities. We would say this a sexual abuse report. It's not particular one community come forward now.
And we do find with representation in particular, which is why the service me and Manjit work for was set up in the first place. We're part of the outreach service in Crasack, and Crasack has lots of different services that support survivors. And we recognised, it was about 2008, we recognised that Coventry is a very diverse city, but the people coming into Crasack didn't reflect that. And we knew as an organisation, this is sexual violence isn't just that group of people's problem, it happens to all communities, so why aren't those people accessing the support? And that's why outreach was set up to get, instead of labelling these communities as hard to reach, actually recognise where we as an organisation are hard to reach, and going out to those communities and trying to provide the support and understanding the barriers. And from that work, we've now been able to almost double the amount of BME survivors who are coming into our service, and actually prove a point that it happens in all communities.
So that was in 2008?
2008, yeah.
So up to that point, sort of the BME communities, the statistics would show that they didn't have a sexual abuse or sexual assault problem whatsoever.
Yeah, that's what kind of, we went to community, they were saying, oh, it's not our problem. So we were denying in a way, denying about, this, it's not happening. Yeah, it's not happening. We found in a way, look, we want to make ourselves better in position. Oh, it's not happening to us, it's happening to other communities. That's what was happening. And now we are recognizing now, and some cases are coming in the limelight as well. So then people have started to believe, look, this can happen to any communities. So that's we are taking this.
So you think, is that barrier gone now?
No, we still have challenges. We have every day when we go to community, we have different challenges we are facing, and we are answering these challenges, what challenges are, and we are still living in the myth of no, it's not. We haven't reached yet, but like Suba said, we have like doubled the number now. So in a way, some of our communities, they have started to think this is our problem, this can be our problem. So they are coming forward.
What are the
now.
causes? When you speak to victims, is there a common theme of what causes sexual violence?
Power and control.
Or is sexual violence and domestic violence, are you dealing with both? Or are you dealing with sexual violence?
They both cross over quite a lot. So of course within a relationship you may be experiencing marital rape as well as domestic violence, and cases like that we support the survivor with sexual violence, and then we'll refer to other local services who specialise in domestic violence, because they have two very different ways of dealing with it and supporting people to heal from it. But with both of them really, it is power and control, and that's one of our biggest things when we go out to communities. We'll get people saying these people have got mental health problems, these people are not normal. We'll get people saying things like, oh, it's because they can't control themselves and they can't control their sexual desires, and all these kind of excuses really for these people. And again, that focus is taken away.
Who do you get those reasons from?
It's anyone and everyone. Myself and Manjit, we work in different parts of the community, so we'll work predominantly in BME.
Will they be members of the community?
Yeah,
they will
members
be excusing the behaviour of one of their members of
You'd
their
be
own
surprised. We've had those kind of comments from professionals. It's those myths are creating this bigger issue of excusing the perpetrator and then putting that blame on the victim and saying, well, she shouldn't have been out at that time, or she shouldn't have all that, or she shouldn't have said the wrong thing to provoke him. And we're shifting the focus from the wrong things, really. And I think in the BMU community, especially the Asian community, we've got this big issue where we're very good at gossiping and we're very good about knowing about other people's business, but we're not very great at supporting people when something bad's happened. And we're quite good at excusing people, and when I say people I mean men. We're quite good at excusing male behaviour, and we're very good at blaming women, which is why we find so many women from the BME community who are experiencing sexual violence find it very, very hard to come forward, because of those pressures, they know that they're not going to get a good time from people, and they're probably going to get isolated from their communities.
Well, what's the solution to that?
Well, we go out and we talk about it. It's as simple as that, really. We go out and we start that conversation, and we give the realistic approach of what sexual violence is from a survivor's perspective, because that's who we work with. We work with survivors, and saying, so for example, what Manjit's got in front of us is the Price for Honour, which is some research that CRASAC did a few years ago, and it was interviewing survivors from South Asian backgrounds about the barriers of disclosing sexual violence. And a lot of the women said in there about them not coming out because they were afraid of being blamed. There was the big concept of honour and dishonouring their families.
And their own.
And their own, exactly. And then the consequences of speaking out and telling somebody, and then, you know, everything else that goes in between with that. So we start that conversation and we give it from a survivor's perspective, and we say, well, imagine if that was somebody you knew and they're going through that, what would you do to support them? And we're finding, you know, we've managed to double those numbers of women coming in, but of course that's not going to solve sexual violence. That will get more women to get support.
When we're talking about statistics, I mean, that's an alarming statistic that we've said early on in the show, but I don't know if people at home understood the significance of it. 1 in 5 women will be or will have experienced sexual violence
in their lifetime.
In their lifetime.
And
so it's not a question of this is happening to women. Do you think you know anybody that's... You know somebody that's happened to. We all know more than 5 women.
Absolutely.
How can we not?
That's what it is.
So we all know a victim.
We swipe under the carpet. Like, I would give answer to your last question you asked, how we can solve this problem. This is one of the things you arranged today that will be, it will give lots of people a message of, and like speaking out today is the first step. You know, we are speaking out,
knowing that the service is there.
And the service is there, and speaking about this topic, like Subha said before, they never learn from school. School we don't have that sex education, or, you know, proper kind of, and then we don't talk about in our homes, and no dining tables. We never talk about this subject. We always try to swipe under the carpet. You might have noticed when something come in the TV, the show, and our parents they try to turn TV off. No, don't watch that kissing and these things.
Absolutely.
So we do try to hide these things, and this is not going to go anywhere. And this kind of thing today you have organized will give message. You know, people will talk about their homes.
It will begin to
start.
Open a dialogue.
That's what me and Subha are doing as the community. Just starting this. Okay, look, this is the problem. How we can tackle this, and we do raise awareness. We do workshops about. So, in a way, to people to bring that subject into their homes. The more we will talk about, the more we will be aware of, the more we can tackle this. That is, we always, you know, have experience of, and we always think that can go, in a way, it's a barrier they have.
With yourselves, you run workshops in Coventry. Are you aware of workshops that are required but don't exist in areas other than Coventry, where you can't reach, but the local authority doesn't maybe have the resources, or doesn't maybe make those resources available for lack of volunteers maybe, or qualified individuals?
So like you said before, we're part of the rape crisis in England. Rape crisis in England and Wales, kind of umbrella, and there's a lot of us that are dotted around England and Wales, and Scotland as well, actually, and all those different centres have different services. So some will have outreach support where they're able to go out and provide those workshops in schools.
Would they be tailoring that for bilingual BME communities?
That's the thing, and that's again one of the barriers. It's a lot of services unfortunately don't have the money to do that, and that's what it is. It's funding. For example, local authorities, I guess some may not see it as much of a need,
This is a local authority funded project, so nobody's going to be at the end of the show asking for direct debits or any of the money or anything like that.
No, this is a funded project, and it's the outreach service where our predominant work is working with BME women and girls, which is black and minority ethnic women and girls within Coventry, and we're a core service part of CRASAC, so even if funding disappeared, we wouldn't. That's how important CRASAC recognises that this kind of work needs to be done, and some of it happens in other places of the country. It really again depends. And then if they're not a rape crisis centre, there's domestic violence agencies, there's specialist services that are set up just for BME women that are around the country again. But again, it all comes down to funding, unfortunately.
Absolutely. The thing is, regardless of what BME communities themselves have convinced themselves of how prevalent this problem is, the funding and the fact that it becomes a core aspect of the funding would betray the lie, wouldn't it? It's there for all to see that the funding is made available and it's become a core aspect of it because that problem is very, very real.
Yeah. Absolutely.
When you go out to Asian communities or Asian institutions, like for example Gurdwara and masjids, how accommodating are they of your work?
We are always positive and we work like the positive. We have one Gurdwara in Coventry, especially Crossroad Gurdwara. They have opened the door for us and they recognize that's a problem. They want their community to have that kind of knowledge. So they recognized and we have started going. Yeah. We established one group over there on Fridays. And again, we are very, very flexible. We have to be flexible. We know that women, they don't spend time on them. They can do for everyone, for their husbands, for their children. And the Fridays are the days they come with their children. They have Sikhism. They learn Sikhism and Punjabi classes. Right. So where mothers, we have mothers classes and the children have their different classes. So that's the way it works very well with these women and works very well with that. So it's a Crossroad Gurdwara mainly. We have a really successful, we are doing our outreach and they are very much, they are supporting us in a way. So you come and, so welcoming us in a way. Yeah. We tried some other Gurdwaras, but we haven't still reached that success. We would like to continue working with all Gurdwaras and all temples and all masjids. We went to masjid as well, but still it's very much challenging.
We started the answer with we were always positive.
Always, the positive.
I think we've got to be
beginning to an answer.
So that's we are looking forward to work with other Gurdwaras.
So where are you predominantly focusing your outreach work then? Is it in community centres and
wherever anyone has us, really. It is. It's out. We're quite lucky with outreach in CRASAC because it is very flexible because it has to be around community. So a lot of our work has changed over the years, and with the research in particular, we've taken on board a lot of the recommendations, and one of the recommendations was get into religious venues and start telling them about sexual violence, because I accessed mine and they didn't see it as an issue. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know how to support me. So that's kind of what led to the work of going into religious places, a venue, taking on board what survivors had said. We were doing work in faith schools now, we're doing work in schools anyway. And we're doing a lot of work in already established women groups. So, places where women wouldn't really expect to be talking about sexual abuse, but bringing that topic to the table and making it's just that little bit of awareness and planting that seed for them to just kind of explore the idea, really, and for them to recognise we've got a responsibility. We all have, regardless of whether you work in this field or whether you know a survivor, you've got responsibility to be talking about this and to be challenging the attitudes that exist in our community, because tomorrow you don't know, that could be your daughter or son coming on your door and saying this is what's happened to me, and if you're not prepared for it, you could potentially be that parent who isolates from their community, and then they're more vulnerable and then they haven't got that support. So it's really I think parents and just community members need to recognise this is an issue we need to take on hand, because at any point it can happen to somebody you know. It doesn't discriminate anybody's sexual violence, just like homelessness, it doesn't discriminate you, and it could at any point be you. Just the figures show it. You know, one in five women over 16.
In the second part of the show, I do want to go into the figures, and I do want to dispel as many myths as possible. But just before the break, if you could explain to me how and what parents can do to educate their children, because at the moment there seems to be a vacuum, a void between a child being born and then approaching and experiencing puberty, and then there's no conversation ever after that. And the first conversation may well be one of, oh my God, what happened to you? Do you know what I mean? Explain to the viewers at home and myself, because I need education on it as well. What can a parent do to have that communication with their children?
Like Subha said before, Subha goes to lots of schools to raise awareness about sexual abuse, child exploitation, and around sexual abuse. But if parents, they don't know about this subject, number one, how they will deal with
the sexuality in general.
And how sexual abuse happens. So we do have parents workshops, we do in the community, we do in the schools now. You know, some parents come to school for coffee morning, some schools organize. So we do go that group as well. And moreover, we have, you know, how to respond if your child comes home and says something, or you can sense that my child has come today is different. What something happened today, or he's not speaking to me, or he's not eating properly. So can pick the signs. We always teach them how to acknowledge the signs, what kind of signs they have. So they can know about the signs of, you know, what my child is behaving. And then how to respond. That response is the very, very key. How we will say, sometimes we say, oh, look what happened to you, and we make this child just stop and shut his or her mouth. Just give them time. If she is saying something, oh, look, this happened, okay. If she's not saying, we know that child won't say in one go. He might say something, oh, look, something happened, and she just ran. Just don't run after her. She will tell, because she has told you, she has started. So just give her a time, or give him a time, to give him that space. And then when you feel like it's a relaxing time, or you are eating together, or you are just relaxing, then ask, oh, look, you were saying this thing. Can you explain what happened? So is how to respond when he or she is disclosing is very, very important.
So it's not necessarily going to be a complete conversation in one sitting. It's going to be a staggered conversation that the adult is responsible for being patient with.
Patient with. We have experience, or we have clients, they come, one client say 1 week he or she will disclose a little bit, and then will come back again, he will say, or she will say. So they don't, you know.
Unfortunately, we're late for a break, but we will also come back, and we're going to stagger our own conversation, and we'll be back just after this break. Don't go anywhere.
Anji, and welcome to our very, very brand new show, After Hours, because here we'll be covering the topics which are not normally covered during the hours.
अकल बादाम खा के नहीं आंदी, अकल ठोकरां खा के आंदी.
ठोकरां खा के आंदी, बिल्कुल. As long as you're working, you will find a way to kind of get back onto your own feet.
But some people, they like to use their power, even they haven't got it.
ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਪਿਆਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕੋ, ਅਕਾਲ ਚੈਨਲ 843 ਇੱਕ ਨਵਾਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਐਤਵਾਰ ਸਵੇਰੇ 8 ਵਜੇ ਤੋਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ 9 ਵਜੇ ਤੱਕ ਆਪ ਦੀ ਸੇਵਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਜਾਏਗਾ। ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਆਪਸੀ ਵਿਚਾਰਾਂ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਰਨਗੀਆਂ, ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦੀਆਂ ਫੋਨ ਕਾਲ ਹੋਇਆ ਕਰਨਗੀਆਂ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਜਾਣਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ, ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਤਾਜ਼ੀਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਤਾਜ਼ੀਆਂ ਖਬਰਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪ ਜੀ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸਾਂਝੀਆਂ ਕਰਿਆ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ। ਸੋ ਵੇਖਣਾ ਨਾ ਭੁੱਲਣਾ 843 ਅਕਾਲ ਚੈਨਲ ਹਰੇਕ ਐਤਵਾਰ 8 ਤੋਂ 9 ਦੇ ਦਰਮਿਆਨ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ।
बोले सोने हाल सास भी अकाल।
Okay, welcome back to Encounters. Before the break, we were talking about the need for adults to begin a conversation and an ongoing dialogue with their children, so that abuse may well be detected before it ever happens. If you could speak to your children and you have that communication and those lines are always open, you may well spot something that your child is experiencing that may well lead to sexual abuse. But that conversation, as you were saying, Benji, was not a complete conversation that you have once with your child and it's done. It's not one of those conversations. So it's an ongoing, it's a staggered conversation. Yeah, please continue.
Yeah, is there anything else you want to add?
I think it's kind of like, well, Manjit's always been really brilliant with this, and it's something that's always stuck with me. And it's a very basic 2 questions to your children, and it's got nothing to do with sexual abuse. And it's when they come home every day, is ask them one good thing that happened and one bad thing that happened. And when you get them into that habit of being able to explain how they feel, and really be able to share their feelings with you, and doing what Manjit said is being patient, don't go off on them, don't get ready to give your opinion and how you feel they should have dealt with the situation. Give them that space to listen, just to say how they feel, express themselves. And one of the 2 biggest things we find with the responding to disclosures, so easy things to do, is listen to that person. Just listen, no interruptions, no putting your views into it. Just let them say what it is and believing them. And parents have a big thing with very quickly jumping to conclusions and sometimes thinking their children are exaggerating things, or they've got a misunderstanding, or he wouldn't do that, he's a really nice uncle, for example. And I think that's where we fall short, really, is we don't listen to our children and we don't always believe them. And if we don't do that the first time, if it ever comes to something as serious as sexual abuse, and they've got that experience of you're not going to listen to them about something really small, they're not going to come to you, and they're going to have to hold that, and they will fall into that number of 82% who won't tell anybody as a child that they've experienced it.
We have our young people's group. We always ask reviews of what their experiences were and what worked very well and what didn't work. So we have at Krasak, if you will go to our Facebook or our website, you will see there are messages, 4 messages: believed, heard, safe, accepted. They said we never believed by our parents, by our family. We never accepted, and we never heard. No, look, what you are saying is rubbish.
Never heard,
And we were never felt safe because it's happened within the families. So that 4 messages they gave. So this is our main, Krasaks. We always keep that 4 messages.
But the statistics do show that predominantly victims of sexual assault or sexual violence will be within the family unit.
So over 90% of victims will know their perpetrator, and most of them, especially with children, almost all times it's a family member or a family friend or someone who has very, very close contact with that child, and is usually, and I think again with the Asian community where we know so many people, and everybody's uncle and auntie.
Everybody's an uncle and auntie.
And you have to kiss uncle and auntie, exactly, and and we're given these messages of, even if that child doesn't feel comfortable, we're given this message, you have to, because they're a grown-up, you have to go say hello, you have to kiss them goodbye. And if we're giving those messages, when they grow up, they're thinking they're an adult,
an authority figure,
and we have to respect them. That's what we've been taught.
What they say. You don't say no to an adult.
Exactly.
Myth busting. When we have statistics that show over 90% of children will be abused by a member of their own family, when we know then that 1 in 5 women, 1 in 6 boys will be a victim of a sexual assault or sexual violence in their lifetime, those are harrowing statistics. Those are statistics that should be national news. Instead, the national news is telling us that we need to be prepared and vigilant about a particular community. I'm not going to be the BBC. I'm going to say the Muslim community. That the Muslim community is the #1 threat to minority communities and to the majority community, and that these grooming gangs are roaming the country, preying on children. Do the statistics and does your experience with victims bear that out?
No. And I think that's the honest answer, really. CSE is a very new thing. Everyone's just getting on board about what it is. It's always been happening. In the 90s, it was called child prostitution, but it was CSE. It was exploitation of young children. So now everyone's getting on board and they're starting to do the research. They're starting to figure out what's going on. And it is, like you said, it is predominantly said it's a Muslim thing towards, and it's usually white girls. And again,
and Sikh girls.
And Sikh girls, absolutely. And everybody knows how accurate the news is. They'll put out what's most sensationalized, what will get people reading.
But in terms of statistics through the National Rape Crisis Centres, and through your own work and your own experience speaking to victims, it's we've had we've had high profile grooming cases with Rotherham, Oxford. We've had one in Coventry, not so publicised, but exposed, prosecuted, and jailed ultimately. So with that experience and the knowledge that you have that isn't public knowledge in terms of statistics, and what you do through your own training and through your own work, you'd say that is not accurate at all.
That's not accurate at all. It's difficult with statistics because it's so new. But what we found, exploitation, it's been happening for years, records. But that label is very, very new, and everyone's starting to understand it and really get to grips with it a little bit more. What we found with some of the research that we've come across is, and it makes a lot of sense if you look at the demographics of the country, that the highest population of the highest kind of ethnic background for offenders of CSE are white British, because there's more white British people in the country, and there's about under 7% who fall into ethnic minority. So there's
and
very
the gangs are part of that 7%.
Exactly, and those gangs that fall in part of that 7%. So it's very small scales. Of course, it's happening. We all know that. But it happens again within all communities, and I think that worry of if we don't if we stay away from all Muslims, for example, our girls will be safe. We kind of make things worse for ourselves, because we're forgetting. We think we know what a groomer looks like, and if somebody does potentially try to groom that young person and they don't fit that idea of what a groomer looks like, then they're really open to be abused and taken advantage of. and we're more likely to sit back and think it's fine. They don't look like what they look like in the newspapers,
Well,
so they must be a safe
93%
person.
of sexual abuse of children of CSE would be happening by a family member in the house,
Yeah,
at
and
home.
that's
So-
with CSE, it's kind of, there's a massive focus around, this is kind of the biggest thing that affects children and young people, but it's only a third. It's a third of what children and young people would experience in terms of sexual violence. 2/3 is child sexual abuse within the families,
Yeah.
within people from their own communities, people who...
So is there a danger of spending a long time looking at who's in your front garden, not realising who's in your front room?
Yes, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely right. Yeah, we always say to don't go out, don't go in the dark, don't go alleyway by yourself.
Yeah.
You might be, in danger. But we know only 10% rape or sexual abuse happens outside in the dark or alleyway. 90% at home, very safe.
With the lights on?
With the lights on.
And
The
Disney Channel film.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. So 90%. If you see 90% is too much, and it's happening in our own safe houses, where we call this child safe house,
Yeah.
and we are protecting them. So no one believes that. That's the hard thing. When you asked before, that makes children hard to speak out. 82% they don't speak out. Some might be uncles, they love them. Some might be their cousins, they love them, they play with them, and they know the consequences are, if we will disclose to the person, he might go to jail. So that's what stops them. Don't disclosing these. So that again, it makes them not to speak out.
I think our
Like-
community forgets that it is a problem within our own homes, and many of the times, you're opening the door to these perpetrators and letting them walk in, and you're making them a cup of tea and giving them a biscuit,
Yeah.
and you feel that because they're an uncle or a brother-in-law or their dad even, you think your children are safe with them, and I think sometimes as because our communities are so in denial, so many people are so in denial that sexual violence happens in our communities, that they may even see the signs, but they'll
Willfully ignore
excuse them. Yeah,
Yeah.
they'll think, oh no, that was just me thinking a bit, or how dare I ever think something like that
Yeah.
of so and so. And again, it is, how does a child come forward and tell their parent that the other parent is abusing them?
What can our community do about this? How does it get addressed?
I think the biggest step is accepting it's a problem. I think as soon as you've crossed that bridge of realising this isn't just a...
But how do you, like yourselves, you've managed to operate a group in a particular religious institution, but not any other. How do you get into those?
That's a bit challenge. It is difficult,
Mhm.
but again, we said we are trying to reach to them. We are trying.
Do you think they are unaware of the problem, or, I'm going to put you on the spot here,
Yeah.
it is encounters after all. So, do you think that is a problem of them being unaware of the scale of the problem, or possibly not wanting the wider public to be aware of the scale of the problem within their community?
I can say both.
Mhm.
Both.
There's an
yeah.
element of both.
It's an element of, yeah. Sometimes when we went to one of the other religious place, we were about to get into that, that's now we set up all things when you will do workshops. Then again, we just go out of the loop. Maybe management committee at the time it comes, or other issues they come look like, things are happen, how it will happen if our women will be educated, and these both things we come across, these both things.
Yeah. How to change that attitude though?
It's a long road. We've got to be honest. We've got to be realistic. It's not going to happen overnight.
What can the general public do to help you and help themselves?
I think just open these kind of debates and discussions like today. We are very thankful and privileged to be here. Yeah,
Not at all.
and that's we open debates and we do discuss about these things. if say in debate 50 people, even one person will take that message, that we will find it's our success, you know. So that's we can do. And the community, if they have any group anywhere we can go, or we can set up the groups, you know. We just don't talk about only sexual abuse. We do have other aspects of around our family, around our community, how we will be close community, how we'll support each other, how we'll help each other. So community can help us, and volunteering for us, you know. So we have volunteers opportunity. Our helpline runs by volunteers. If any of community members, they have English the first language, or they know Punjabi, they are more than welcome. They can come and they can help us to you know, set up these kind of more debates, and in our center they can add the, you know, workshops and what we are doing here. That we can.
So once we've dragged this from under the carpet, where it's been for decades, it's at all costs not to be brushed under the carpet again.
Yeah,
exactly.
So acceptance is the first step.
Yeah.
You know, we will accept. Yeah, we accept this is the problem. Second step will be how we will come across, and how we will break that. You know.
But you said at the start of the program that it was a global problem. It wasn't restricted to one community. Wasn't restricted to one religious group. Wasn't really restricted to one ethnicity. With such a issues on such a scale, is there a danger of this being sort of, are we looking at a sort of a sexual preference that is criminal, of course, but part of the human psyche that will never be accepted?
Maybe possibility. There will be some people who won't accept that this can happen.
There's no cure. We can only imprison people.
Yeah.
But we haven't changed their sexual preference to children.
Yeah. I think when it comes to, for example, when it's difficult because not all offenders of sexual violence are paedophiles. Paedophilia is a very different thing.
Absolutely,
you know what I mean?
100%.
So it is, and it's again. There's different. There will be people who've got specific things that make them do these things, and then there will be people who will just do them because they know they can do them. They know they can take advantage.
Yeah, it's the domination. And
exactly, and that's what we find with all our cases. All the people who've come through crash axe doors or gone through our phone. It's power and control. That's what it is, and it's that element that we need to be fighting really. And that happens in our homes, you know, how we treat our boys and girls differently, how we put our boys in a pedestal and we say to them, you have, you know, you might be the younger brother, but you're in charge of your older sisters, you've got more power over them. Yeah. And those messages lead to them.
Their honour is in your hands.
Exactly, and it leads to that thinking that they are much higher and they're more superior than their female counterparts, and that all those messages feed into sexual violence and gender-based violence. And it's like Manjit said, you know, just talking about that topic, and of course lots of people at home won't have the platform to do this, but they will have conversations with people, they will talk to people in their family, they will go to weddings, and I know how much women love to talk at weddings and love to talk about other people. They'll go to Gurdwara or the masjid and they'll talk about these things. Why aren't we not talking about sexual violence in these part of these conversations?
Is there a danger when say for example the water cooler conversation, if somebody finds something sort of unnerving or a little bit uncomfortable, and that when a conversation like this is brought up, the moment there's a disagreement on something, and it might be a very minute detail that they don't agree with, instead of getting past that and continuing the conversation, that becomes the end of the conversation.
Yes.
Because we didn't agree on 1% of the 100% that we need to talk about, that we're no longer able to carry on. Is there a technique, is there some advice you can give to people that will help them get beyond that, so that the essential conversation isn't derailed by a nail in the road?
Yeah, we do get like we said before, we have challenges every day when we go, like victim blaming. We do consultations with women, we did with boys, we did with girls and women as well.
Yeah.
So we found, you know, what they were saying, no, this is women's fault, this is girls' fault. What they were wearing that skirts and they were wearing clothes, small short clothes, that's their fault. Yeah, we did. But what happens in that conversation, luckily, of someone who believes that, no, this is not women's problem, this is not girls' problem, this should be perpetrators, we put these perpetrators' problem. And one woman, if she says against this woman, and then we won that conversation. We do quite a lot happens when one woman comes up from the community. They are quite, you know, women, they want to bring a change in attitudes, bring a change to society, community. So they do sometimes. We as a professional, we can't say, look, this is how, but we do say, oh, statistics says. Sometimes we have to say, we come across law, this is a religion, our religion says this is. We said, okay, then there must be a fine line. If not, there is a law in this country.
Surely they've misinterpreted the religion.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, they do a lot.
The cop-out, isn't it?
Yeah, and then we have to say, this is, then again, if these things, you don't...
Does that not become another form of, well, I did wind him up? You know what I mean? The religion says it, I wound him up, I shouldn't have talked back to him, you know, I should have accepted X, Y, Z, and therefore I got a slap. And
I think we find, especially when religion gets mentioned, we find a lot of women, they don't know their religions.
Yeah.
They know what they've been told about them, and our first response usually is, show us where it is, because we've looked at everything back to front.
Of control, though. You tell somebody
where is it?
What the reason you're allowed to have
exactly,
control
and many of the times, or pretty much all the times, we've never had a woman come to us and say, this is where it's written in so and so, because they can't find it. It's not there.
It's not there. No.
It's not there. It's something they've been told, and it's starting that conversation. It sounds so basic.
Yeah.
And if it isn't something you can do in a platform where you may disagree with people, start it with your kids at home. When you're in the car or you're walking back from school and they're not having eye contact with you, when you're doing the dishes in the kitchen, you know, when you're sitting on the settee watching a commercial, have a conversation with them, start that conversation. And once you build that relationship, you can start talking about things about their bodies and where safe space, you know, who's safe to talk to. Because it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it's not something we should keep expecting the education system to be just sorting out for us. Their first school is at home, and we need to be taking responsibility to teach them that stuff, because if we don't, where they're going to go the internet, and that hasn't got the best stuff on it either.
It's not nowhere to be sort of basing your life on with the facts there. That will be the same as showing me where it says it. Nobody will be able to show you anything. You can't find the same thing twice ever on the internet. But that's all we've got time for today. I thank you for your time, you know, and the effort you've made to come all the way here and speak to us about this subject. Is, like I said at the start, one of the most sensitive subjects for any community, but one as sort of self-conscious as the Asian community. It's especially so. So I do thank you for your time. I know the sort of risks that you take in your own communities as well. You know, confronting the male-dominated communities that we live in, and empowering women. This is what you're doing in, you know, ultimately.
Thank you. Thank you very much for giving us an opportunity, and I would say well done to taking that step and giving messages to our community.
But
thank you.
That's all we've got time for Encounters this week. So we've learnt that a conversation is the most important thing to do. That's all we've done today. But hopefully it's stirred something or triggered something in somebody somewhere, and it will all have been worth it. So that's it for Encounters this week. Join us again next week, same time, the Carl channel. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.